waking up for Fajr is easy, and it's one of the most fundamental things in Islam. In my opinion, waking up for Fajr differentiates a person who is a Muslim and not really practicing, basically who's on the fence, versus an actual practicing, hardworking Muslim. Alhamdulillah, I've been consistent with this habit for a really long time. In fact, I kind of can't even remember the last time I struggled with it. And I'm not saying that to, be arrogant or anything, but I'm just saying that to show you, when you make this a habit, it's really easy to stick, right? It's not something that's difficult. But I was thinking back to the days when I was struggling with it, when it felt like it was super difficult. And I was thinking, what really helped me make the switch to becoming, a kind of non-really practicing Muslim to someone who really tries and strives in terms of the faith. And I realized it was all just in fear. It was all in just a fear of Allah. This is something that you might hear YouTube sheikhs talk about a lot, whoever you might be watching, but you might not really process it in your head. But I'm telling you, in terms of doing good deeds, right? And especially in terms of walking away from bad deeds, fear of Allah is what you need. I realized that the difference between me now and me back then, when I really didn't care about waking up for Fajr or I really struggled with it, was fearing Allah. See, when you fear Allah, you fear the consequences that come with doing certain actions. And in the case of waking up for Fajr, there's a big consequence to not waking up and, missing Fajr, at least on purpose. If you do it on accident, that's whatever. But if you do it on purpose, there's a big consequence. And when you start fearing Allah, you start fearing that consequence. And it's not, a shallow fear that, you just don't really care, but it's a little bit, no, it's an actual fear, right? You actually feel it in your heart and you feel like very regretful after maybe missing Fajr. So an interesting story, right? I was struggling with praying Fajr and waking up on time specifically until I watched this one YouTube video. And it was like one of those Islamic YouTube videos, right? You've probably seen them, where it's like a speaker and then a bunch of images and stuff. But the video was specifically about waking up for Fajr. I believe the title was like, Muslims who don't wake up for Fajr, like, you should be scared. Something along those lines. You probably know what I'm talking about. But I remember the thumbnail. And the thumbnail was kind of a scary image. And it's kind of funny, right? Because it wasn't like scary, but it was like a threatening image. And that really kind of visualized in my head that waking up for Fajr and not missing Fajr is not something that you want to do because there's consequences to it. So I wasn't scared of the thumbnail or anything, but it really popped that image of my head of like, bro, there's a serious consequence to missing Fajr. And so what I realized was it was gaining the knowledge that, gaining the knowledge about the consequence of missing Fajr, gaining the knowledge about Allah, the consequences of doing bad deeds and that stuff in general that makes you, do good deeds and avoid bad deeds. If you struggle with Fajr right now and not waking up on time, then I guarantee you don't fear Allah enough, and that's because you don't know enough about Allah and you don't know enough about the punishments and you don't know enough about doing good deeds. And I'll give you another example. If I promised you I would give you a Lamborghini every single time you woke up for Fajr, then you'd probably do it, right? You'd probably make it a pretty easy habit. But the reality with Fajr is we know that in the Hadith, 2 sunnah before Fajr is worth more than everything in this world. Every material thing at least. And so when you're waking up for Fajr and praying just the 2 sunnahs, not even the 4 rakahs, but the sunnah rakahs, that's worth more than a Lamborghini. That's worth more than anything in this world. So now you should understand it's the knowledge that makes the difference. The knowledge motivates you to wake up for Fajr, and the knowledge gives you the incentive. And the knowledge also makes you scared of the consequences of missing Fajr. So it might sound like generic advice, but honestly, seeking knowledge is one of the greatest things you could do to work on your good deeds, right? Because it's going to make your good deeds more appealing to you. And for example, something like waking up for Fajr, which is a major sin if you don't do it on purpose, or miss it on purpose, I should say, that gaining knowledge is going to allow you to do that a lot more easily. Basically, you have to have your priorities in place. And gaining knowledge is one of the best ways to do it, or probably maybe the only way. You don't have to just gain knowledge in terms of hadith, Quran, or memorizing those things. But one of the best ways is to learn about Allah and learn Allah's names. Because when you learn Allah's names and you learn more about Allah, you're going to start to love Allah more, and you're also going to start to fear Allah more. Because when you understand that Allah is most capable of punishment, then you're going to realize that, bro, I could be punished because of my misdeeds. Or when you learn that Allah is, most forgiving or most merciful, and also the one who gives provisions, for example, you're going to realize that Allah gives provisions, right? And you also realize that your work doesn't necessarily give you money or any provisions. It's Allah that gives you that money and provision. So why would you not focus on pleasing Allah directly? Because Allah is the one that gives you that stuff. So very practically, I want to give you practical advice, right? If you're struggling with waking up for Fajr, then I want you to gain knowledge about Allah, so learning Allah's names and attributes, as well as gaining knowledge about Fajr itself. gaining knowledge about the consequences of missing Fajr, as well as the benefits of Fajr. And of course, the last thing that's also ultra important that I can't, undermine is making dua. Every night you should be making dua to wake up for Fajr, especially if you're struggling with it. If you're struggling with it, then it's pretty much a necessity. And if you know Allah's attributes, you'll understand that Allah gives you the power to wake up for Fajr. It's not by your power you wake up for Fajr, it's Allah's will. So you have to make dua to Allah and ask Allah for you to wake up for Fajr. Now, the next thing I'll say is about productivity. And honestly, I've been the type of person to wake up for Fajr and then go back to sleep after I prayed Fajr for a really, really long time. In fact, this is one of those habits that I only recently really tried to focus on fixing. And it's a very bad habit. One of the best things I did for my productivity now or recently, and one of the ways I beat my laziness using, Islam, is by waking up early for Fajr, and not just doing that, but also starting my day after Fajr, and specifically starting work right after Fajr. So practically, it's doing the hardest task in your whole day right after you pray Fajr. And that's hard, but the Prophet ﷺ tells us that this time has the most barakah in it. And you're going to be the most productive during this time, and you're pretty much going to get the most done. So if you can utilize this time properly, then it's one of the most productive things you could do, in terms of habits. In my opinion, it's the most productive habit you could include in your day. Now, the way I added this habit, or fixed this bad habit, I guess you could say, is very similar to the way I actually started getting into Fajr consistently as well. It's by gaining knowledge. For example, I'll tell you, when I learned that hadith about, the time right after Fajr, the early morning being the most productive and the most, having the most barakah, I actually wanted to wake up and start my day right after Fajr. Because normally I just felt tired and really I didn't really care about productivity in the early morning or whatever. But after I read the hadith, I kind of had a motivation and an incentive to start my day after Fajr. And also there's just an aspect of discipline to it that you're not going to be able to avoid. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be tired no matter what after you wake up for Fajr, unless your sleep schedule is absolutely perfect, which, to be honest, mine isn't and yours probably isn't. You're just going to have at least a little bit of discipline. But I want you to understand the incentive to doing these things. Because if you actually do them, right now it seems that it's super difficult and it seems like there's not a big reward. And, just think back to the Lamborghini example I gave. Waking up for Fajr and also working right after Fajr. These things, the reward to these things, you can't even imagine, right? Because they're kind of in Jannah, right? They're awaiting for you. You don't have them right now compared to maybe having a Lamborghini right now. But I want you to really visualize it and really understand that the reward to these things are way greater than anything in this world. And once you understand that, waking up for Fajr and starting your day right after Fajr and getting to work becomes easy. In fact, it becomes kind of enjoyable because you understand there's a massive reward to it. Anyway, that's all I have for this video. Don't forget to start making dua to Allah. Assalamu alaikum.